I'd like to thank everyone for joining the NF Network's webinar today. NF Strong Together, Navigating NF as Moms. I'm happy to say that we have 75 moms registered here for this webinar today. I'll tell you a little bit about the NF Network. We're the national organization. We were created 38 years ago, believe it or not. We continue to be led by individuals and families that are affected by neurofibromatosis. We're dedicated to advancing NF research, advocating for federal funding for NF, strengthening our NF communities. Today, you're going to hear from three moms and a leader on advocating for your child. They're going to teach you about their personal NF journeys, and you'll get tips for advocating. And you just so that you'll have the skill set that you don't have to face NF alone. I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Sarah Turner. She's the mother of Amelia. We met Sarah and Amelia when we were at a Docs Rock event in Orlando, Florida, where Amelia turned out to be the winner of our dance concert. So I'd like to turn it over to Sarah to tell us about her NF journey.
She still has that trophy right on her shelf. It is like her favorite thing. So I'm gonna take a little opportunity to show you all about my child as I chit chat here with you today. So I'm Sarah. Um, this adorable little baby is now 8. And she has NF1. She was diagnosed when she was about 4 months old is when it was suspected. And by 9 months is when we got the confirmation. Um, we had a really phenomenal pediatrician. It's not everybody's story to get a diagnosis so early. Her only symptom at that time was cafe au lait spots. I don't even think I knew the word cafe au lait spots at this point. It was completely new to me, and as was the title neurofibromatosis. Um, it took several months, as a lot of us know, to get that final diagnosis and a push for genetics, which again was an uphill battle as well. Um, I'm sure, like a lot of you, I went into research mode. I Googled, I did the Googling. Everyone says not to Google, but that's the first thing I did. Um, and the second thing I did was look for community. Um, I immediately requested, oh, you're not there yet. I immediately requested the packet from Neurofibromatosis Network. I got involved with the walk. I joined pretty much any Facebook group that would have me. Um, and and really just looked for any opportunity to find out what the heck this thing was and how it may affect my child. Especially when at the time her only sign was cafe au lait spots and all the other things hadn't quite shown up yet. Um, it was incredibly overwhelming. I think what makes the most difficult is a lot of is the uncertainty in neurofibromatosis. It's not always what's happening right now. It's worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's happening 20 years from now. And it's living in between those appointments and scans and watching for symptoms, um, and wondering whether you're doing enough, whether you're seeing the right specialists. One thing I've learned in this community is that a lot of folks don't have access to great specialists, or have to travel quite far in order to reach a specialist who knows about neurofibromatosis. A lot of folks are kind of just, looking it up almost the same time we are. So it's been a really interesting journey. And we're so lucky. We had a phenomenal neurologist who had actually had a fellowship at UAB, which, was kind of at the forefront of a lot of the research, and he understood neurofibromatosis and had Amelia take an MRI at 2.5, which again is not always the case. But I think, as Kim said, with advocacy, one of the things I think we realized early on was how integral having phenomenal, very knowledgeable people in your kids' care team at the beginning was really a piece of the advocacy, learning for us to finally advocate for ourselves too, having that team that really acted like partners with us. This was actually when she first got her MRI, and was all um, drugged up still, really loving that popsicle. But this moment, I think, you know, with NF is an interesting diagnosis as well because it's not necessarily just the diagnosis that rocks your world, and it sure as heck did. But it's all the different things along the way. For us is when Amelia was diagnosed with her optic pathway glioma. This was September of 2020 as well. And it was just when everything was opening back up for elective procedures. Um, we went after we received the news, and pretty much a full breakdown for myself, lots of tears, lots of freaking out. We did seek three different opinions. It's a huge thing that I suggest. I tell everyone that you ask questions, you ask more questions, and if something doesn't feel right, even if you can't explain it, ask more questions. Get the second opinion, get the third opinion. One thing that is, I don't know, unique about our story, I suppose, but probably isn't, is that of our three opinions, we had two full tumor boards review her information and one neurosurgeon at a different NF clinic. And I'm not going to mention where that is. And they told us to wait. And then the two tumor boards told us that not only did she need to get chemo, but she needed to have it urgently, and to not wait because we were going to wait to go to clinic a couple months later. And they're like, we don't really suggest that. Her tumor was both optic nerves, chiasm, and hypothalamus. And they were really concerned that because of the size of it, that it was probably growing. So on to chemo we went. And that's a decision I think all of us face in one way, shape, or another. It's not always chemo. It might be surgery. It might be another treatment. What specialists and how we go to, and making those choices has weighed quite a bit on me and Robbie, Amelia's dad, my husband. You don't get certainty. You do your best every day. You do the most you can do with the decision, with the information that you have at the time, and really go for there. We're really grateful because she responded to treatment. Her tumor shrank incredibly. Actually, it doesn't even light up usually anymore. So we were very lucky. She responded to treatment very well, a little passy.
Mhm.
And even though how about, gosh, second round of maintenance, she did get the allergic reaction like a lot of kids experience. And we just happened to be placed at a phenomenal teaching hospital down in Miami who was able to do the desensitization protocol. We had to do overnights instead of one day infusions. So it was a lot. It is weekly. And it was just a lot. It was a lot. I tell people a lot now that I'm a few years out from it. During that time, I was completely emotionally frozen. Outwardly, I was in constant motion, poured everything into Amelia, her emotional and physical well-being. I didn't go back to work full time because of some family circumstances. I did have to do some work for a family business, but I was able to spend my whole time being her mom. And for me and my personal nervous system and mental health, I don't know that I could have even done it differently. I know that's not a lot of people's stories. Um, I was so grateful that we spent a lot of days together resting, being lazy, playing, snuggling, finding joy. This is post-pandemic as well now, still middle of the pandemic as well, 2021. So it was just a really scary time for a lot of people. Um, and I recognize a lot of people don't have the resources to do that. It's something that, I think something I tell a lot of families, even when you don't have those resources, how can you, when your kid's going, especially through treatment, because a lot of our children end up with something at one point, even if it's frequent appointments for neurological issues or dermatology, these appointments, these things that they're constantly going to, how can you be present with your kid and one, make it kind of normal, and also be there as a consistent, loving support during that time for them. And really understand not just that they're going through a lot of this trauma piece as well, but that you are as well. And just holding yourself through that as well. There's a lot of there's a lot of grief, I feel like, with this diagnosis. It's something that I don't know that a lot of people feel super comfortable talking about, but there's definitely a part that I like to acknowledge in when you have a child with such a life-changing large diagnosis like this, really understanding that you are going to grieve what you thought was going to be in your life. And that's okay. And it comes up a lot. It comes up for me. And sometimes I find myself saying, I wish this had happened differently. I wish this was something else. And stopping those thoughts where they are and realizing what a wonderful whole child that I have here. And what a blessing she's been, and what like a cool freaking kid my kid is. She really is. She's such a cool kid. Um, so one of the things like throughout this whole journey is about this advocacy piece, and it's looked so different. And I think like, for me personally, it's turned into a lot of looking at your whole kid, like looking at the ways that we can see what they're going through as trauma, even when they don't go through something like chemo, these constant trips to doctor's appointments, knowing they have this diagnosis that's very uncertain, really realizing the impact that this has on your child and making sure that they can still go through life as themselves, which includes, paying attention to their mental health, making sure that they get the services that they want, asking the questions, getting connected to groups on Facebook or in person, I think is really incredibly different, like incredible. It's a thread that I think connects us and weaves a web that you can fall into when you're struggling. Um, we did a lot of stuff from walks to some earned media, and we even went on an RV trip, and I'll probably get to some of those pictures, and tried to do some enough awareness there as well. Oh, I'm going over time. So it can look very different to a lot of people. I think like the only other thing I kind of want to say, and we can talk about a little bit more deeply about advocacy, because I think that each person can have their own thing. Like I said, with me, really like my focus going forward is mental health, and just making sure that my kid has all the resources. And I want to tell you one real quick story, and then I'll be done. So recently, Amelia was at a birthday party, and they all decided to do a cold plunge in a like cooler. It's really random. But my kiddo was meditating, and she was calming down her breathing, she was concentrating, and I almost brought myself to tears because this kid has learned that she is in control of her body as much as she's able to be. Calmed her breathing, was like the longest kid that this little like kid, it wasn't even a real cold plunge. It wasn't quite cold enough to be the real cold plunge. But there was a woman there who is this like high level coach, does executive high level coaching. And she's like, wow, what a skill. And I'm like, oh, we've been practicing it since chemo because I just want to make sure she has tools for herself. And that's really what advocacy is. It's understanding your tools, understanding what tools you can give your kid, using those, not being afraid to use your voice and to use those skills that you have to make sure that your kid can do things like go on a freaking cold plunge for 3 minutes. And she felt so great about herself because she was able to do this little meditation and get through it. So that's kind of, and this is some of our trip when we went on an RV. My husband also is trying to run a race in every state to raise awareness as well. So, but I just want to be mindful of time. I think it went a little over there.
The pictures are adorable. I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
one thing I didn't mention. So these are some of the fellows. So she was at a teaching hospital. I love teaching hospitals. If you have one, drive to one. We got to see so many fellows, residents, people that came through, and every single one of them, they're like, "Can we talk about that?" I'm like, "Please come in, ask me about NF." They're like, "Are you in the medical field?" I'm like, "No, I'm just a mom." Like, this is just what you have to know when you have a kid with a rare disease. So, yeah, she's just a really cool kid, man. And that was in the RV. So, and this is back to our hometown in Jupiter. So there we are. And there's the racing all the states. So we've kind of put those on a little bit of a back burner right now for a lot of different reasons, but we'll never stop advocating and never stop talking to other families about the things that they can do to make their kid have the best opportunities that they can possibly have. So
Well,
there's
thank you for
there's in
that.
Chicago.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
I love what you said. You said you don't get certainty. That's really even when our daughter was diagnosed back in the uh, was it 85? We never got certainty either. It's not something that we get with NF, but you said you do your best every time. So every time we do our best,
Mhm.
I really like that. Very, very meaningful for all of us in our families.
And it's not like something that it's you have to do it every time. You're not just like, oh, I did this meditation thing and now I'm fixed. It doesn't work that way. It's every single time, oh, I'm having these spirals again and I'm freaking out. I'm gonna do what I can do what I can do. And really just repetitive in that space and yeah, love first.
Yeah, great job, Sarah. Thank you very, very much. And I would like to introduce you to Terry Roush. So Terry and I have known each other for many, many years. She serves as a director on the board for the Neurofibromatosis Network. She's the president of NF Michigan. Terry herself has NF2, and so does her son Avery. So I'd like to introduce you to Terry as she tells their story. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for inviting me to be here today. That picture you saw of Avery was 2 years ago, I think, when we were on Capitol Hill in DC advocating. It's something that he and I have started to do together, and it's very rewarding to join everybody else out there who is advocating, but to do it with your son is very special. So, as Kim said, Avery has NF2, but really the story begins with me. So I was diagnosed in 2007. It was my early 40s. I had had trouble with hearing. My right side was not hearing very well. At that time, we just sort of said, "Oh well, I just have a bad ear." Um, but in my early 40s, I was being seen by a neurologist for unrelated issues, and I must have said something that clued him in that he should order the MRI, the eighth cranial nerve. Um, and after that MRI, that's what brought the word neurofibromatosis into our life. And yes, I orbited into the unknown, spiraling, depression. You Google it just like you're not supposed to, just like Sarah said. At that time, there were not Facebook groups yet. I don't think. Maybe we were just starting with Facebook. Anyway, I did reach out to anybody who would talk to me, got connected with people here in Michigan who had children with NF2 and got myself a plan. Because the hearing on my right side was going, um, or actually I found out that at that time the tumor on that side had caused me to be deaf on that side. The tumor on the left was not affecting my hearing. So NF2, the diagnosis is that there's bilateral vestibular schwannomas on either side of your balance nerve, on either side of your head on your balance nerves, and the right side had killed my hearing. So because there was no hearing there, this, the concept of surgery was a little bit easier to swallow because when they go in to take care of the tumor, they're not going to make me deaf in the process. So that's what we did. We went for surgery to remove as much of the tumor as possible, debulk the area around, and then put in an ABI, which is an auditory brainstem implant that would give noise recognition, not speech recognition, if I was to ever lose my hearing on the left. So shortly after that, we had both of our sons tested through MRI. At that time, they were in upper elementary and middle school. And I remember the day that the MRIs came back, the results came back. It was an afternoon where I was going to my tennis lesson, and I got the call just before. And boy, I just tell you, the emotions that came over me is just so scared and angry, and I started to worry. And I tell you, that tennis lesson, those balls were being whipped as far as they could go. I didn't give them a moment to breathe. Wasn't very effective playing that day, but I got my aggressions out. Oh, so that night, after we told Avery that the results were positive for him. They were negative for our other son, Evan. He had play rehearsal. He was involved with musicals. And we loaded him up with a bunch of those blue NF bands that were so popular then, those plastic blue NF bands. He marched off to practice, handed them out to all of his thespian friends, and went ahead with practice. And just as of now, brought me to tears. You know, he was doing what he loves, moving forward and living life. And to this day, he continues to do that. The standard of care for NF2 is MRI once a year to make sure those tumors aren't doing anything terrible, and an audiology test to make sure your hearing on both sides is not changing. It's basically a watch and wait. There's really no way to shrink these things at that time, especially. Now there's Avastin and so forth, but so we'll watch and wait. And while we were continuing to have our MRIs and our hearing tests annually, I did everything I could to bring strength to him and our other son, to instill on them advocacy, raising awareness, and fundraising. So we did everything we could to prep them for what could possibly happen. In 2007, when I was diagnosed, I flew out to LA to have my surgery. That's where the surgeon at the House Ear Institute had the most experience with implanting the ABIs. And I knew I wanted our sons to come with us so that they could see me with that great big huge eggshell bandage on my head, a huge egg-shaped bandage on my head, and coming back from it, walking crooked down the hall, because I was a fighter and I could do it. And if I could do it, then they could do it. And that's what we tried to instill in them the whole way through. After my surgery, I didn't have any issues for 15 years. We had a clean slate there. Avery's tumors were so small, they weren't really doing anything terrible to him. We just kept getting our MRIs and our hearing tests. During that time, we got heavily involved with NF Michigan. We did walks, we did fundraising, we did awareness, hoping to instill in the boys that sense of giving back to the community when we can, when we are strong enough to do what we can do to move this to a cure. And when the boys were in middle school, they had a friend who was receiving his bar mitzvah that year. And in the Jewish community, when you're receiving your bar mitzvah, you have to do a mitzvah project, which is a project that is good for the community, a charity, something that's that betters the world. And this young man wanted to do his project for NF. And the three boys, Evan and Avery, my two sons and he, they designed this fundraising event where they planned a road rally. And the three boys did a lot of the work, most of the work. The mom and I, we obviously were there to help, invited all of our friends. It was a very successful event. And in the process, they were able to teach people about what NF was, because this was so brand new in our lives at that point, and not too many of our friends and family knew about that. So that was very proud of them at such a young age for starting to do this. When Avery was in high school, we were enrolled in the National Institute of Health, a natural history study, where we went every year to have our MRIs and audiology tests. They flew us out there, they gave us hotel, lodging, and paid for all of our tests. It was a great time for us in the early stages. We had time to have family come out. Evan and my husband Carl would come out after our exams, and we toured DC and had a great time. As we went through high school, you know, Avery's getting more and more committed to more and more activities and starting to apply for college and auditioning for musical theater school, and life gets busy, and this started to get into the way. And you know, he wasn't enjoying it as much anymore. I've always enjoyed going, but there was one time when a callback was happening, that he was just auditioning for the show, and there was a callback, and the callback was on the date that we were due to fly home, and I couldn't predict if the plane was going to be delayed or not, and we had to tell them of any conflicts. And so because I couldn't tell them that the plane was going to be on time, you know, he was not moved forward through the first round of auditions because the conflict. And that was such a hard moment for he and I, very disappointing for him. And, tough love. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And, everyone lives on and moves on. But those are the tough kinds of decisions you have to make, right? So as I mentioned, through high school, I was continuing to make his appointments for him. We would go to our MRIs and our audiology tests. Even through college, I would do that for him when he was coming home for breaks or summer vacation or something like that. When he graduated, he moved to New York City, and now he's in charge of his own care. And I worried he didn't take the ball by the, take the whatever that saying is. He didn't do anything for a long time. He didn't contact a doctor. He didn't have MRIs. He didn't have audiology. And for a long time, until he was 26, he was on our insurance, and it would have been easy for him to do. And then he turned 27, and he was no longer on insurance, and it became even harder. So recently, he has, gotten a good job with benefits and is seeing Dr. Yohei and is up to date on everything that he's supposed to be doing and keeping an eye on it. So through all these years and all these different things, I did worry about him and how it was going to affect him in how it was going to affect him in his adult life and the journey that it would take him on. I worried more maybe for him as it was for me, because it was diagnosed so much earlier in life. I guess we could rest our easy about that, because we could watch and wait earlier than with me, because by the time they found it in me, I was deaf. I didn't place too much guilt on myself, because I was dealing with the same thing that I gave him. I mean, there's only so much you can tackle in life, and I did enough worrying for myself and placing enough guilt on myself that I didn't necessarily, transfer it to him. I just kept trying to have our family do all that we could do to raise awareness and funds. Currently, he's 29 years old, living in New York City, a fulfilling, happy, great life. His tumors, as of the last 2 or 3 years, have started to act up. It's still a watch and wait, but he's now, the time has come for it to be in the present, right? When he was first diagnosed, all growing up, it was always something that he'd have to deal with in the future. No big deal, no big deal. And the future is now, and he's realizing that he's got these things that could affect him, but he's not letting that slow him down. He's, like I said, living a very successful, fulfilling life, professionally, socially, and that's our story. We just continue to advocate, all of us, all four of us, advocate and raise awareness and do all that we can do.
Well, thank you very much, Terry. Your story is amazing and very uplifting for many people. There's two things that you said that I really would like to highlight. One was your participation in clinical trials. So when you and Avery went to NIH, there's going to be, we're very thankful that you do that, and to all the people that participate and help us move our chances of getting these treatments and some of the treatments that are already there, due to the fact that so many people have participated. So there's going to be a link that's going to show up in the chat that talks about a really exciting project that's happening called My NF Guide. And they're looking now to just kind of close up this study. They're looking for some families that don't go to one of the major NF centers. I think there's only like 8 spots left open. It would be an awesome opportunity if there's a family out there that is interested. Check out this link. I'll try to pop it up at the end as well, and so you can see the PDF. But I want you to be able to have that and have the opportunity to participate in that if you can. And the second thing I wanted to say was about Avery. Avery is such a delight. He has sang at the end of Hope concerts once or twice in Las Vegas, and then at the Chicago and 5 times.
Not in Las Vegas. He's sung for Jeff 5 times. He's not been to Las Vegas yet. I think
Okay.
Jeff wants to get him to Las Vegas at some point.
That would be great. But if the people that are on the call have the chance to come and listen to him sing, you should go. It's absolutely delightful. It'll give you goosebumps. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to introduce you to a friend of ours, Hillary Burns. She's also from Michigan. This is her son, Crew, who has a plexiform tumor. She has been sharing Crew's experience with us for years. I think she said earlier today, at 1 year old, and I'll let Hillary tell you. I think she said he's going into middle school now. We've been taking Crew's story to Washington, D.C. He has been on these new drugs for plexiforms, and we've been tracking his discovery, using his story to educate Congress about the importance of federal funding for NF research and to be able to continue that work. So I'd like to thank you, Hillary, and turn this over to you.
Thank you so much for having me and for the other moms that are speaking and sharing. The sense of community and that we're not alone is a really strong takeaway from this. And hopefully those watching this can feel that support too. So our crewman, he's 11, almost 12 now. He was diagnosed when he was 13 months old. We had never heard of neurofibromatosis ever in our life. We just so happened to have a pediatrician that knew what NF was, that just so happened to study under one of the doctors here in Grand Rapids. And so he was born with about 5 or 6 cafe au lait spots. We thought they were birthmarks, but by that 1 year checkup, he had over 15. So based on that diagnosing factor, and the pediatrician said, he has a large head. We're going to refer you to the NF clinic. And then they wanted to do a brain scan. Turns out our family, we just have larger heads. So that wasn't a part of it. But unfortunately, at 13 months old, at that first brain scan, they found that a tumor on his brain stem. So that was the start of it. That was where he was diagnosed. It was a spontaneous mutation, so we have no family history of it. And the crazy thing is he has a twin sister too. She doesn't have it. And it's been quite a journey. I was thrown into this medical world, and it's odd somehow where life happens the way it does, because I was a social worker. I've worked in different medical fields, like with adults with traumatic brain injuries, and I've handled case management. And then I was thrown into those roles as a mom, but also having to juggle all the things, manage life, having multiple children. I have 3 kiddos. But also this really scary medical stuff. Yep. And I went down the Google rabbit hole. The doctors always tell you not to do that, but that's just not possible as a parent. It's really just not possible. But I felt like I was trained for what I had to do as his mom. I could only imagine being a mom or a parent thrown into this scenario and having no idea what to do and where to start. So, things happened over the years. Tumors, they started growing. They started affecting his tongue and the way he was swallowing. That was when he was 2.5, and we had to put him on thickened liquids and thickened food. Had to track down thickened ice cream so that he wasn't left out of family things of where we're going out for ice cream. And, I had 3 children under 2. So I had sippy cups, and I had to make sure he didn't drink out of his siblings' sipping cups. Like it was a lot. When he was first diagnosed, that doctor told me his labs and everything showed that he had cancer. And that was the worst week of our lives, where for a week we believed and were told he had cancer. They had us remove a couple things from his diet and retest. And then they were like, nope, no cancer. So that was a whirlwind, but it it started that wheel in my brain of, I have to be his strongest advocate. Like, yes, these medical professionals know a lot more than I do, but I have to be his strongest advocate. And yeah, sometimes some don't know what NF is and that the whole shebang. Once the tumor started affecting his tongue and his swallowing, his current doctor said that they weren't familiar with that area. And I was like, red flag. I researched, I found, where am I going to go? Who am I going to see? I saw someone put in the comments that there's an organization that will pay and fly you to where you need to go. We used Wings of Mercy, and they flew us to UAB, and we saw Dr. Bruce Korf, and just getting all additional info and answers. Like, that was my approach. Like, we each have our own method and our own coping mechanisms. I needed answers. I needed, how can I help? What can we do? Which is actually really hard with NF, because a lot of the times you're told to wait and see. You wait it out. And I'm like, nope, I want to help my kiddo right now. So UAB then led us to, they said, you need to get care at Chicago. So we went to Ann and Robert Lurie Children's Hospital, and we did a trial there. So that's where Crew first was on the MEK inhibitor called benimetinib. And he had a really great response to it. He had 36% reduction in his tumors. So that was really, really amazing. It was really hard on the family as a whole, where we had to go out there so often. It's quite a blur thinking about it back now. We had to travel from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Chicago at least once a month, once every 2 months, for checkups, for scans, for lab work, for all the stuff that goes into a clinical trial. We had to go there a lot, and we'd stay at the Ronald McDonald House, which was amazing. And so eventually the side effects were so bad for him on that. Any side effect that could happen, he was getting it. And it was really, really rough. That was right around where he was in young fives in kindergarten. And his tumors stopped responding to the medication. So after several breaks and starting again, and several breaks and starting again, we decided, no, we need to stop with this one. And then we transferred back to Michigan Care. And then that was right around the time where selumetinib or Koselugo became FDA approved, and we got him on that. And he's been on that, I've lost track, several years at this point. It has stabilized his tumor growth. I would like to see more reduction in his tumors for him. But also, it's a constant weighing game of quality of life and growth of the tumors and what they affect. So currently he's almost 12, going into 6th grade, middle school. Crazy, not ready for it. But the tumors, so he gets speech therapy. We were able to wean him off of he's been on general diet since probably he was 4 or 5 years old. So we were able to wean him back off of that. So he's on a normal general diet and liquids. And I'm losing track of where I was going. So selumetinib, he's doing well on it, stabilizing the tumors. So the tumor growth has affected his speech, because it's affected his tongue. It's affected the hearing in his right ear, because they're growing and their swelling are closing up that ear canal. So he has a hearing insert, but then that can cause pressure sores. So it's a give and a take. But his tumors have grown, and he has one cheek that's visually larger than the other. And then the MEK inhibitors have caused edema that has not gone away since he started that first MEK inhibitor on his left arm and leg. So thankfully it doesn't inhibit his activity level. And I mean, it makes shoe shopping a little difficult where one is larger than the other. He gets a little winded sometimes, so that could be medication or that could be building up that endurance. Um, he is such a tough kiddo. He just wants to be like any other kid. He wants to be treated like any other kid. He has said, why do they worry? Like, don't worry about my cheek. They don't need to talk about my cheek. Um, so I've been big on teaching him how to advocate also for himself at this stage too. Because we'll be out in public, say at the pool, and there's kids that are mean. And that is a really hard thing as a mom. And so there's times where I step in and I defend or I advocate for him. But I've also taught him, and I've seen it in action, which is cool to see that strength in him of where I give him the words of what you can say. Like you can say, if you want to talk about it, you can say, I have NF, like, I have tumors here. If, or you can say, I don't really want to talk about it. And it's okay. And he can advocate that for himself. As a mom, I've definitely gotten stronger in my own coping mechanisms. In the beginning, anxiety, depression, it was really hard, all of this out of my control for my kiddo. How do I help him now? Oh, I can't help him now. I have to wait and see. It was a really hard balance to deal with. And but over time, like I got into art. I've worked as an artist, and that started as a coping mechanism, and it just brought a sense of me again, of something I can do for myself that's relaxing and calming. But also truly just jumping in and taking action. Like, how can I advocate? How can I bring awareness? What can I do to help? So we've done all sorts of different family members. I've previously been on the NF Michigan board. I went to DC one year with Terry, and we advocated for research funds. I think we got approved for 25 million that year, which was amazing. To crazy things like the Cupid Undie Run in Detroit. And my husband and I have ran in our undies for raising awareness and funds. So I just want to say to all the moms that are watching this now or later, like that, like we get it. It's hard. It's not fair. Cling to those that can help you through it. Find things that can help you through it, and you're not alone. And yeah, that's my story for our crew, man.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very helpful. I think one of the things that you said that I'd like to bring out again is the fact that we're really grateful that we have these drugs, and they're definitely helping. Crew's life, quality of life is definitely improved, but we need to keep going to DC. We have to keep advocating for more funds for research, do everything that we can with awareness, because would really like to have those side effects reduced, in the future. So they're easier to take. Not that we're not grateful, we certainly are grateful. But we would really like to improve the quality of life for our individuals and also find other treatments for other conditions besides the plexiforms, which are huge, but we would like to have more federal funding for NF research for all the different types of symptoms and hopefully someday a cure. So if anybody's interested in that, you can put a note in the chat. If you're interested in joining in on some of that advocacy work, we'd be glad to have you. As I sit here and I listen to all this, it makes me remember like when our daughter was first diagnosed. She's 42 years old now. She was diagnosed at 2.5, and learning all these steps to begin with. But I keep learning every single time because I'm thinking about like when she was a teenager and young adult, and we used these same skills, and it helped us into that transition of care, right? So then she
Yes.
was able to go in and take care of her own appointments and set them up and get the information that she needs at them, and then eventually she'll be completely independent, right?
Yeah.
When we're not around to help her anymore. Thank you so very much. Even the goals that we need to set. It's a good reminder for each one of us for every single one of our meetings when we're going to go visit our doctors. I would like to do some questions. Our time is really limited, and there was one right here that I think is one that's common, and I think we hit on a lot of the topics, that is really important to moms today. But this one here is one that we didn't talk about yet. She's asking, how did you feel comfortable and or confident sharing your child's diagnosis when they were so young? I continue to struggle feeling comfortable sharing with others outside of our family. I mean, for me, that was a really hard struggle for us. In the beginning, when Jenny was really little, it was easy, right? We used her in publicity, we shouted her story up. And then once she hit the junior high age, she said, Mom, I don't share my story anymore. I couldn't use her name. I could still be involved with the NF network and do the fundraisers and the educational meetings and the work that I do, but I had to leave her out of it. And I had to honor that then up until she was a young adult before she was interested in sharing her story. And she's still pretty private, so I never just do it without talking to her first. So what I would like to say to that mom is it's really making disclosing the diagnosis of NF to others is really a communication that happens between the parents and the child. And each relationship seems to be different. Like obviously when we're in the healthcare profession, where we'll be sharing it why, completely. But then even at school, there were some areas where we did share it and she did have an IEP, but there are other areas in school where we didn't share it because then it was like over coddling in some places and it caused some trouble. So then we were very selective about who we shared it with and who we didn't share it with. Um, and Jennifer now, as an adult, she shares it with certain friends, with good friends, but not with all of her friends. Does she share her diagnosis? I know that's not the same for every person, but that's what's best for our daughter. I mean, there are other people who are much more open about the diagnosis, and that works for them. It sounds like Avery is really good about sharing his diagnosis, which is fantastic. But it's an individual choice, is and it comes really from the conversations that you have with a parent. Does anybody else on the panel want to add to that for this mom? Go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, Crew was diagnosed so young. So him being so young, it felt like a parenting where my husband was very private, whereas I needed to share and talk with others to help myself cope and learn more and talk about it. That was my coping mechanism. So that was a learning thing in our marriage and as parents. And then fast forward to now where Crew has an IEP, and it was a part of the discussion with him, empowering him of, you're going to a new school next year. These 3 elementary schools are combining. There will be friends that don't know you yet. Everyone doesn't know each other. There are different ways that you could choose. You could present about NF and about your journey. You could do it alone. You could do it with mom. You could do it with the social worker, or we could print something and hand it out. So it was kind of this empowering thing of where he could choose at this stage of life, or we don't say anything because you don't want to draw attention to that part of your life too. So I don't know. Each parent is different. Each journey is different, but I felt like, and I've met different families along the way. Like there was one fundraiser we did at a basketball game up north where a parent came to me and they said, "Thank you for being so open. My child also has NF and I've been too afraid to share, and I'm now going to share with family." So there's just such a difference in how different people handle it, and it's okay. But I really like, that it's different at different stages and different families, but I enjoy that it's a conversation now with my son and he can choose.
Yes, thank you, Hillary. Thank you.
I-
And
Oh,
go ahead.
You have time. Well,
Go ahead.
I've been having this conversation with Amelia since she was 6 because we started putting things on online, and I had been sharing on like a private group, and then we made it public. So we have that conversation with her regularly, and she shares, like, she brought a printout of her article that she was in to camp. Like, so but she's 8. So we were the same. We just have that conversation with her, and whatever and it's hard when they're this little to kind of assess what they know and understand about sharing and how open we're going to be. But we just, as soon as she says, I don't want to talk about it anymore, everything gets erased. So.
Go
And
ahead.
I've been pretty much an open book since the day I was diagnosed, and I think Avery kind of got drug into that whole mentality. Um, I speak my story anytime I can. There was a time when his symptoms were changing and he wasn't quite ready for himself to speak about that, and we remained quiet until he was ready to talk about it. So, like you said, it's all based on what everyone's comfort level is.
Oh, I agree. I don't see any other questions that I feel like uh, I need to get. Deborah Nell, I know you're on the backside there. Did you see some questions there that we need to bring forward? We could take about another 3 minutes here.
Not really questions so much as comments, reactions to what was said. So we had someone say that they feel the very same, and also wonder why the best way to help their son process the diagnosis himself. So I mean, I guess that's kind of a question if anybody wants to expand on that.
Well, go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
So, from the very beginning, I want to share like kind of a funny story about this. So when Amelia started getting through chemo, my approach was to talk about surgery with her and that I had had surgery. Here's mommy's scar. You have a scar. Sometimes it kind of bothers me. I know sometimes it bothers you. More of this relation. And that put into her head that everyone got chemo. She thought I was talking about chemo. She asked her dad one day, Daddy, where's your chemo scar? Um, and it taught me a couple of things. One, to when I talk to her now, I try very much to focus her and her experiences and not try to compare. I think as a mom and as a woman, it's a very like thing that we do. We want to relate, and we do that with our children. So I really very much try to focus on what's going on. How does that feel to you? What does it feel to you when I talk about this thing that you have that I don't have, that they don't have, that you've only met a couple other kids who have? Is that icky? Is it funny in your body, or do you feel special? Kind of really looking at lots of different words. I have like a word thing, and we really, I try to focus it now on her. And it also made me realize that she understands a lot more than I thought she did. That she was like 2.5 or 3. She was like 3, maybe when that conversation happened, 3.5. So she was definitely processing and understanding a heck of a lot more and observing a lot more. So we try, just as like right now we're trying to do like the book on the body. I've I show her any resources I have about like, oh, I don't go into the what ifs with her by any means, but we do talk about, because she's 8 and that's just not there yet. But she does go to her appointments, and every single time she's there, do you have questions for the doctor? How did that feel? It's really opening the conversation, trying to keep your reactions in check. Like, they're super valid and you need to have your time to freak the heck out. But really just regulating yourself to help them regulate and centering it on their experiences.
Very wise, Sarah. Very, very wise.
And it took a long time.
Oh, it does. That self-discipline is hard, very hard. Well, I really want to say thank you to our moms here. You guys did a great job in this panel. This is going to be a great resource for the people who are attending today and for people for a long time where we can share this information. And I want to say thank you to you, Kristen, and to Alexion, for Alexion's support of these webinars so that we can bring them to NF families, and for the information today about advocating for your child. It's very helpful for all of us.